He's not ready. He's not afraid to just let it fly.
Even-
Right? Oh,
To pretend he's ready.
that's right. Exactly. So, guys, yeah, I think we're live.
Things
So,
become constant.
welcome to this Friday's Resolve Riffs. You've got the usual Barrel of Monkeys, and in addition, this week we've got none other than Ben Hunt, who brought his best mustache. And check out the party in the back. Ben, don't be shy.
I won't be shy. I'm not shy about this at all.
Absolutely.
I was telling these guys, this is my version of dyeing my hair purple for the quarantine, and I'm shooting for the Sam Elliott mustache and Roadhouse.
That's exactly what you've created.
Well,
I like that.
That's nice of you to say,
for me.
because frankly, I'm worried that I've got the Wilford Brimley look. So there's.
I just came out of listening to a podcast on Almost Famous, the movie, a 6-part podcast, and then watching the movie. And man, did you look like a casted directly from that movie after I saw it. I'm like, were you in the movie? Did you? You're like,
Oh yeah, that was me.
Yeah, you were the road manager, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Love the '70s look.
You were the guy that jumped up the roof and yelled, "I am a golden god."
Look. It's definitely a '70s look. Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
That's true.
Yeah, what's
Here's
everybody
you.
drinking?
Yeah, drink as well. Yeah, right on.
Nice.
Happy Labor Day or Labor Day, as you might
Cheers.
say.
Yeah, we've got people in the. We want Ben.
Mm,
Yeah.
nice.
You got Ben.
Nice.
Here he
Well,
is.
it's nice to be wanted. Here I am. So have at
And
me,
I think-
bros.
The last time we got together, which it seems like literally a decade ago, Ben, but remember we sat down
April.
in person, broke bread, shared drinks,
And had a
had
blast.
a grand conversation. You came in the next day. We had a really wonderful chat for our podcast. Literally seems like years ago.
And back
So
up.
much
I mean,
it
it
does.
was
Time
you
has
were
stood still.
there
I mean-
for an event where there were 30 people in a room,
That's right.
and you were expounding on your regular narrative, but also warning people of what we were going to see on the COVID side of things.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's
that
true.
must have been one of the last events you
It was. I remember it well because flying back out of the, your lovely Toronto airport, that was quite an experience. It was just jammed with people wall to wall. Everyone was trying to get back to or go somewhere right before they shut down stuff. So it was just wall to wall people, and just, of course, the most horribly unsafe place available. But that was like the weekend before everything really went to hell.
I have to
with
say
this
that
year.
when you actually came and spoke to us, and I remember sitting across the table and very arrogantly feeling like you were being an alarmist.
Yeah, right.
And
A
then-
fearmonger.
And then the next day we had our podcast, and I was beginning to I was still skeptical, but beginning to sort of think that you might be onto something. And then I think it was the next day that Tom Hanks announced that he and his wife had it, and they canceled the NBA, and this got really real. And there was this weird shift in the zeitgeist, almost in an afternoon, right?
It
when
was-
everybody
it was
went from
amazing.
being disbelievers to believers.
And
What
this
was
is
your
the
experience?
really crazy thing, but I've have a couple of really good friends who are around the Houston Rockets, and we were texting. One of them in particular knew a family member of someone on the Jazz, and then also someone who was there at in the Houston, on the team. And so you're not going to believe this, but I'm the one who broke the Rudy Gobert story. It was me on Twitter. It was literally me. It wasn't an NBA reporter. It wasn't, a ESPN reporter. They all got it like 15 minutes after I did. And, so I tweeted out saying, oh, well, Rudy Gobert, he's COVID positive, and that's why they're all in the locker room and why they've shut down this game. And, Rusty immediately calls me. My partner, Rusty, calls me on the phone and says, where'd you get this information? Because you're going to need to retract that. What the hell do you know about stuff? I said, no, I got a source. And I told him who the source was. He said, all right, goodbye me. And so the whole NBA shut down.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
That's
me.
crazy.
I broke that story.
bonkers.
Yeah, you
You heard
definitely
it
had your
first
finger
on
in the
Absolute
pulse of that
Theory.
thing early on. How far back? When do you remember when you started talking about it?
Yeah, it's late January.
So,
Late
okay, so
January.
big
It was
thing.
because the data was coming out of China, and it was obviously being falsified, meaning it followed a function and a smoothness that you just can't, you don't see in nature or in human society confronted with a exponentially expanding virus. So that's when I really started focusing on it and looking at the Chinese narrative that was at first domestically directed, then internationally directed. That narrative was then monkeyed by the World Health Organization to, I think, horrible effect. And then it was the narrative of it's just the flu and we've got this under control, was taken over by the U.S. government and most governments, particularly the U.S. government. So it's just been, one series of, my word, betrayals after another of governments in the way that they've tried to control and shape the narrative around a plague.
Governments and large organizations like the World Health
CDC,
Organization. CDC.
Absolutely.
It was, I think Eric Weinstein had an interview with Joe Rogan where I think it resonated with me so well. It was about, again, I was thinking about the narrative, the idea about masks, right? And why they came out with the narrative that masks are a bad thing. I remember seeing the video where I'd read a white paper on the use of masks in Japan. And this is, again, like shortly after we chatted.
Right.
And then seeing the World Health Organization coming out with this PSA video that said, if you wear it, you're going to get it because you're going to be playing with it. It's likely that it's worse if you use it.
Yeah.
And so transparent, in my view, that it was about protecting. It was the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It was about trying to protect the healthcare workers. And Eric pleaded in that podcast, like, what if we just changed that narrative to one of, dear patriot, we have these people in need for, if you have masks, if you're hoarding them, he did a much better job than I would ever do. But there was a narrative there that could have been used that wasn't lying to the public.
Rodrigo, I've been very involved with N95 masks, getting them to doctors, nurses, EMTs. So far we raised about $1 million. We've distributed about 150,000 of these masks in packets of 100 and 200 to about 1,200 or 1,250 individual clinics and hospitals and fire departments all across the United States. And so I've been so involved in the whole PPE question of medical masks, right? Medical masks. And you are so right, Rodrigo. I mean, for me, it was Fauci in particular. I mean, the World Health Organization, okay, who's paying attention to that? But it was Fauci, whether it was in 60 Minutes and then later, saying, and this is what really bugs me, right? So you're absolutely right. The intent was, let's call it a noble lie, right? Fauci knows perfectly well that the reason that healthcare workers wear these masks is they are effective, right? They keep keep the wearer from getting sick, right? They don't do anything about the spread, but they are armor. They're that personal protective equipment for the wearer. And I don't approve. And I in fact, it just, like Eric was saying, and, others have mentioned as well, the whole idea of lying to the public for the quote unquote greater good, it always blows up in your face. Always, without exception. It never works. The noble lie. Absolutely right. But here's what made it worse. Rodrigo, was that what Fauci said was not only that, oh, no, you don't want to wear those medical masks, but he also said you don't want to wear the surgical masks either. You don't want to wear the mask that we wear today, right? Which, backtrack, people say, oh, there was a shortage of those. Blah, blah. Bullshit. There was never a shortage of surgical masks. There was never a shortage of these masks that we wear today in public, because these masks are just designed to, just stop, the extent of the, the particulates you're breathing out, and it's to keep others from getting sick. It provides you no protection or very limited protection. And the idea that these masks were somehow in short supply, it's just bullshit. So it was this knowing mistruth, right? That again, it always blows up in the face of government or corporation that tries to do it. And it's that nanny state, we know what's right for you, so we're going to lie to you kind of thing, that the way you would treat your 3-year-old, and that burns me up more than anything.
And a lot of people.
How do you prevent it, though? How do you prevent the phenomenon? So word gets out, there's a pandemic, the N95 masks are helpful. There's an instinct to protect your family, your loved ones. What prevents people from seeking out that protection? Because
those masks weren't available, Adam. You couldn't buy those masks. So the way we got them, man, we had to design like this underground railroad of masks. We had, it was Intel, actually. It was a company that kind of approached us, or not the company. Let me take that back. It wasn't ever the company. It was employees at the company, right? Saying, hey, we can buy these on our own here in China, and we can ship them over to you in like packets of 200 and 300. We could stuff them in envelopes and send them to you.
Amazing.
And it was literally this underground railroad of getting 30 or 40 people to do that got us really going on getting masks out here that we could then distribute to doctors and nurses and EMTs and the like. Those masks, you couldn't buy them here. So it's not like, oh, there was going to be a run on Walmart to get N95 masks. I mean, they didn't exist.
But just curious, did you ever have any individual or group of individuals who did have them to distribute to you ever? Or was it always this underground market that you dealt with?
For us, it started with that underground railroad of just good people, going out as individuals, this kind of bottom up effort in doing it. The reason it's very difficult to get corporations involved is I remember Facebook had 900,000 N95 masks, right? Why Facebook is hoarding 900,000. They've all got their disaster plans, right? And their campuses at, Google's the same way, Apple, they've all got this. And so, they will make a show, and it's a good show, don't get me wrong. I'm glad they do it, of giving them to a state or federal emergency management group, a hospital system, let's say. The problem with that is that it's the same problem we have in our economic system. It's a trickle-down system of PPE in the same way that we've got this trickle-down system of monetary policy and everything else in our world today, where the idea is let's make the rich even richer, whether it's money or PPE, right? And eventually some will trickle down to the clinic, in Port Charles, Louisiana, right? And of course the answer is this stuff never trickles down. So our goal was never to compete with Facebook's got 1 million, N95 masks, well, good for you, give them to the FEMA and, they'll sit in a warehouse forever, right? We're not going to compete with them. But we weren't going to wait on them. So what that meant was starting with that very grassroots underground railroad of masks, and then finding suppliers. These are all typically Chinese suppliers of KN95 masks, because you can't get 3M masks. They don't exist for ordinary people to buy. And, over time you find good, solid suppliers who aren't trying to rip you off. And you find out, what makes for a good mask and what doesn't. So, mistakes are made, but that's what it took.
So back on the idea of the narrative, because it's been 2020. It feels like you probably, I have no idea. I'm making these up, but just every year you have 5 major narratives to deal with, and it feels like in the last 10 months we've had 35 different narratives to try to disentangle.
Yeah, right. So the big stuff that would ordinarily be a narrative avalanche in years before is like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's Friday, so see ya, right? It's really been amazing. Yeah.
And you see that visually
do-
in your. Sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
No, it's cool. And I want to get to the maps because they are absolutely fascinating. One of my favorite things. But I wanted to get your thoughts on just speaking of narratives, because one of the reasons why I was late to the party in terms of embracing the importance or the urgency of response about the COVID pandemic is the fact that there was a complete absence of narrative urgency in the previously sort of respectable media, right?
Yep,
but
absolutely right.
But that's fine. I stopped paying much attention to them years ago, but I have always paid attention to markets as a signaling mechanism. And what was so shocking to me, so jarring to me in this episode, and actually over the past 3 or 4 or 5 major episodes, the Trump election, Brexit, etc., was how markets have so consistently gotten it exactly wrong, not just in magnitude, but in sign.
Do you remember your tweets? That tweet that you sent, it was
Absolutely.
like, it's Teflon market. It was 2 weeks before the crash, and every bad news that came out of China, the S&P would go up. And you wrote a tweet saying, this is Adam saying, my God, this is a Teflon market. Like, clearly, you said something with regards to clearly this isn't a thing, right? Because the markets were telling you a completely different story. Anyway.
Yeah. So how do we reconcile this? This is not just pandemic. There's 5 or 6 just massive stories over the last 3 to 5 years that the market has just gotten, like I said, the sign completely wrong on. But that wasn't really, like, typically you had this, the market has this topping pattern, and it's been a completely different characteristic of markets in the modern era. And I say sort of modern era, the last 5 years. Can you make any sense of that?
Yeah, I'll say 2 things. The first is that I've only felt, let me back up a second. So the hedge fund I used to run, my focus was on the short book, right? And if you're a short seller, you're just wired that way, right? I hate it. I don't like being a short. I mean, because you're always seeing the flaw in things, and you tend to be just kind of, it wears you down, right? Frankly, being a short seller, but that's how I'm wired. It just is. And you do it long enough, and you start kind of distinguishing between, I'll say, kind of market stories, and how you've got to play the short. Being a short seller is like playing poker, right? Because you have to fold a lot of hands, and you can't get impatient, and you can't go on tilt, and you have to play for what the pot will give you, right? There have been 2 times in my life when I felt in my bones that, okay, this is a systemic shock, that the market narrative is focused over here when they should be focused on the real world, the real economy. This isn't something where there's an easy fix in market world for what will happen in the real economy. And that the other time I felt it in my bones, right, was going into 2008, after Bear Stearns was taken out in the street and shot, right? Because what I knew was that the story that systemic risk is good and the systemic risk is off the table, that was bullshit, right? Because I knew the prices that they were carrying, residential mortgage-backed securities,
The toxic debt on their or assets, depending on that.
Angelo Mozillo at Countrywide. You're listening to him, give his quarterly call, and he's saying, "Yep, we kind of got a little problem here." It's this. I remember this. The call is clear as day. He said, "Yeah, people keep talking about the subprime. I get it, but it's the real problem for us is the Alt A, right? The stuff that's better, it's not subprime. It's the alternative A class. Anyway, we don't have to get all back into that. And I just remember that conference call like a ton of bricks, and just knowing that the whole world is not ready for this, because there is this $10 trillion asset class that cannot withstand a nationwide decline in home prices, right? So that I felt that in my bones when the market, rallied in April and May of 2008. February of this year was the only other time I have felt it in my bones that there is a real world crisis that I am on top of, that I've been immersed in, and I know, and that I've been around markets long enough to know that they have got this wrong. And there's not a market solution to come out of, nowhere, whether it's the Fed or what have you. Now, the aftermath, the April and the May, the bounce back, I get it. And that's how you have to do shorts, right? Shorts happen in punctuated fashion. They're not forever things. You can hold a long position forever. A short, you make your money and you get out. And but those are the two times in my life when I've truly felt it in my bones.
And the signs were there in terms of the narrative, because I think we were talking about how mainstream media got it all wrong and they were so late to the game, and they definitely were. But the signs were there. We were talking about this earlier, Rodrigo, earlier in the year. When you start seeing whole provinces and cities shut down, and then all of a sudden Italy shuts down, and the mainstream media in North America hasn't caught on to it. If you're something of a keen observer, you're like, okay, I don't care what the mainstream narrative is saying. No one shuts down a country.
Richard and I were getting our
we were way ahead at resolving
oxygenators and
yeah, me too.
Our masks, and everybody thought we were crazy.
Yeah.
And that big short would have happened for you, Ben, were it not for the three-body problem: Fed, ECB, BOJ, sort of the one gravitational pull that matters now in markets, which is central bank.
Oh, for sure. I mean, market world is so disjunct, disconnected from real world, but this was a real thing, so in March, this is when the chickens came home to roost. But yeah, Rodrigo, so right about, Italy was like, and this is why I was just kind of crawling out of my skin. It's like, guys, I mean, this isn't, let me back up a second. Wuhan, China has excellent medical care. Yeah, China in general has an outstanding, I'll say, top of the line medical system, right? But you were looking in Italy, and you don't see this as just a crystal ball for what's going to happen here. It was stunning. But again, to your point about mainstream media, look, and this is true today as well. Everyone sees things through the lens of Trump, anti-Trump, Democrat versus Republican. And COVID was no exception. What was different about COVID, right, was that both the White House and his opponents, at different times, at different points, didn't want to embrace the danger that was COVID. I mean, the Democrats embraced it after it became clear that it was a crisis, but leading up into it, when Trump is saying, "Oh, I'm banning flights from China," right? The knee-jerk anti-reaction to Trump is, "Oh, how racist is that?" And
they both got
come on down,
their own ways.
celebration. And it's just like bullshit. It's just such bullshit.
Yeah.
And Dr. Gupta on CNN saying, "Well, the flu kills more people," and it's like, oh. Anyway.
No, one trusted institution after another, and trusted political party, whatever trust that political parties had at that point, it's all gone now, right? Like even I think I read this morning that the Trump administration is trying to push through a vaccine. And let's say, I don't even know whether it's true or not, but clearly now I see it through the lens of, oh, Trump's trying to get elected. He wants to be able to, well, what if I'm wrong, right? There's no signal there anymore from trusted institutions trying to do the right thing for their communities. And
it's all been either noble lies or just outright lies for their own self-interest. It's just been a betrayal of trust time after time after time. And it's like when you have a teacup and you break it, you can glue it back together, but it's still a broken teacup, man. And it's always going to be a broken teacup.
this dovetails into I think your concept of fiat news, right?
Mhm.
Which so maybe it'd be helpful if you could go into that concept because I think it's really relevant.
Sure. Well, look, it's we're all familiar with what a fiat currency is, and we all kind of rail about fiat currencies, right? Well, look, information, which I'll call news, it's fiat news. It's the presentation of opinion presented as fact, right? An opinion is made up, right? An opinion is something that I'm going to construct, just like a sheet of fiat currency that Nuchin and his wife can hold up like this, right? It's just a constructed thing. And what I think is important though is that that's not fake news, right? It's not fiat news. What we are immersed in, the presentation of opinion as fact, as if it were news. It's not counterfeit news, right? It's not fake news. It's not a lie. I mean, sometimes it can be misleading and all like that, but it's not counterfeit money. That's not the analogy. It's fiat money. And there are lots of things that go into this. One is just incredibly effective for politicians to do this. But
Sorry, I don't know what that noise is.
what's the noise? I don't know.
I keep muting
I
myself.
muted myself, so it's not me. Somebody have
Can you hear
a
it?
lawnmower there somewhere?
Yeah, that's weird. No, I wasn't.
Is
it
Mike
seemed-
frozen? No.
Right,
Anyways,
might
the
be
thing has
Mike's
gone away
here.
now.
Oh, good. So, all right, without the rumble, right? So fiat news is a constructed presentation of opinion as fact. It's incredibly effective. It's required by our 24/7 content providers, right? The CNBC, the CNN, the Fox, the MSNBC business model requires on the constant presentation of news. There is no constant presentation of news. There's like one or two interesting news items a day.
It's
frankly.
the dopamine news cycle, right? It's the breaking news. Everything is breaking news.
Yeah,
now.
breaking.
Everything's breaking news
Everything
all the time. That red banner is everywhere all the time, and you
And
can't
frankly,
get
what's usually breaking is somebody with an opinion about something, right? Breaking. Somebody
we had
said
a
something.
game with my group of friends in college in our WhatsApp chat is to rename the title of an article. Well, you read the title and you think it's one thing, and they got you.
Yeah.
And then the body is a very reasonable, balanced, whatever it is. That could have, and that should have actually had the complete opposite title, right? Why Japan is losing lives, and then it's like how Japan actually handled it. And they may or may not lose lives, but they're actually doing a good job. I'm like, well, what can we learn from Japan? And that's the other alternative title that you can have.
Entirely different editors, as you know, write, are responsible for the text of an article and are for the headlines. Entirely different people with entirely different job descriptions and entirely different, pieces of the business model that they're responsible for.
I'm sure that's happened to you all the time, Ben. It's happened to us too, right? I write an article and it gets syndicated, and then the syndicated person rewrites the title, and then you get all the comments come back, these vitriolic comments come back about the title.
It's the
you're
perverse
like-
incentive to get the clicks, because at the end of the day, it's massification of information. It's the fiat of information. And so the news business is dying to one degree or another, depending on what outlet you're talking about. And so they need the clicks as badly as they can. And so the incentive is there to just destroy.
I didn't know this.
But, I'll say this, guys, because, the company that my partner and I started, we do two things. We do research like you guys do, and and try to apply it for investment models and portfolio models and the like. But the other thing we do is we publish a lot, right? And we've got a subscription business for what we publish. And we don't do we don't have an advertising model. That was such a just a race to the bottom. It's just a pittance you get for all the headaches. So it's not that kind of an eyeball model, but it's important for us in what we write to drive engagement. And I find myself, whether it's the title of an article, right? Whether it's the image that you choose for it, whether it's the topic itself, right? So I wrote this piece on N95 masks, something that is so important to me personally. And I think is, encapsulates so much of the betrayals that we've suffered in, every country from our government and around this crisis. And we got a good reaction. I mean, it's part of the series I was writing on grifters, right? But it just got a fraction of the response, just the merest fraction of a response that my first piece did, which was about Kodak. Because Kodak had, you got the villains, man. It's like, this is not gray. This is not. Everybody can get the idea of these, Kodak, having some contacts in the White House with Peter Navarro and saying, yeah, we're going to be a pharmaceutical company now, and we get $800 million in a non-recourse loan. Everyone gets that, right? It's so hard though to get the eyeballs and the clicks, the engagement for stories that I think kind of go at the heart of really of what we've been talking about.
I'm curious, Ben, because we've well, at least I've noticed this, that the amount of engagement that we get for a piece of writing or for a podcast or what is almost perfectly inversely proportional to how valuable I think the content is.
Nothing sells like
I believe it,
man.
Right? Like just what if it's dramatic and whimsical but says almost nothing, then it gets lots of engagement and retweets. If it's actually content rich, if it has meaning, if it is mildly prescriptive or provides a path to a change of behavior that may be constructive, almost completely ignored.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely endure, I'll say, the same dynamic, right? If we're just talking about just sheer popularity, but what I cited early on, particularly with the writing and because I this sounds ridiculous, but I do want to change the world, right? And you're never going to do that by appealing shallowly to an enormous number of people. That the way to change the world, at whatever level you're thinking about, the world and what change you want to bring, it's having really deep engagement with a smaller group of people, frankly. And so I think it's important, when we're writing, you lose your soul when you say, okay, I got to do a throwaway line on, let me write about Tesla, which is kind of funny because I did write about Tesla the other day, and it was kind of a throwaway, frankly, right? It was I did it in a couple hours, and it's something you've got to kind of mix up the things that are going to be appealing to a broad audience, but the stuff that's important is the stuff that's going to really connect. Maybe it's just with a few people, because that's really all you need.
There should be kind of an alternative, because I remember in a recent conversation you had with Grant Williams, I think you were talking about how Rusty called you out on a mention of a CEO. And this was kind of an aside to a main story that you were writing, and you were calling him out and you were telling him you were just adding another chapter to the crony capitalism that we see. And, but you were talking about how that piece would have gotten a lot more clicks and you would have been able to reach many more people outside of your wolfpack. So isn't there a way that we can kind of get both?
Let's talk about that a second, because this was that N95 grifters piece that I was writing about, and part of it was I went off on a semi tangent. It was kind of, I got my juices going, because I'm one of the focuses I've had in the past has been looking at how stock buybacks, they're not bad in and of themselves. I get that. I love stock buybacks as an investor. Truly, I do. They are used to sterilize ridiculous management compensation schemes. I'm sorry, that's just the fact, right? And one of these ridiculous management compensation schemes happened to be with Honeywell, who is one of the major manufacturers of these N95 masks. And so I just had a little blurb where I was talking about, oh my God, I mean, what this guy, the CEO, none of these CEOs, they've never bought a penny of stock. It's just given to them, right? And it's set up in such a way where if he plays his cards right, he's not a founder, he's not an entrepreneur, he's an engineer who came up through the ranks, and he's a manager, right? He's looking at a payoff of maybe, I don't know, 150, 200 million dollars if he plays his cards right over the next 5 or 6 years. It's like, what world is that, I'll say productive or capitalist, right?
As Rusty says, man, that's the cheese.
He says that's the cheese, and he said, look, it's it'll get the juices flowing for a lot of people, but that is not what you're trying to say here. And he was exactly right.
But you can add a message to that, right? You can maximize the reach of your content by perhaps adding that cheese in,
cheating a little bit,
teasing
it a little bit.
Yeah, including the real message that you're trying to get in there, for sure. Because the whole idea of stock-based compensation is just, it's here to stay, right?
I think that's a bit of a. I mean, look, that's the excuse I give myself all the time, right? It's like, yeah, you kind of cheese it up a little bit here, but you're doing it for the greater good, right? It's that same thing we're talking about, kind of the noble lie. It's not as bad as the noble lie, but when you're cheesing it up, when you're kind of playing to the crowd, right? And masses is fine, but I mean the cheap thrill.
Because look, it comes back down to credibility, right? The reason I think you got the support that you did with masks and the people that help you out and actually do the heavy lifting, I think it's because they trusted you, because they trusted your organization, you and Rusty.
Right on, brother.
And you made, like you said, you can have this shallow following, right? But the moment you ask for help, are you going to get it? Are you going to get the same type of principled people as you would otherwise? And I don't think you do. I think you become a tool for other people's narratives. If you make your headlines extravagant and you push on that cheese, you are giving whomever believes in your values and that they're using that without having probably read your article, using that title and using that lead paragraph in order to further their own arguments and those facts. What do you call it? Facts masked as opinions masked as facts, right?
Yeah.
So I think you need to fight. We're always fighting against it. Yeah. I always you want to push for a good title on it. You're always fighting against getting too much cheese, but it is something you need to be vigilant of.
Yeah. So look, the only coin of the realm that means a damn in this world of debasement that we're in, debasement of information, debasement of opinions, debasement of currencies, the only coin that's worth a damn is authenticity, right? And again, it's that teacup. When I was running my fund, it was as part of a larger asset manager, and I remember having a conversation in the kitchen with one of the two co-founders of the firm. And I don't know how we got on it, but and he was saying, I won't even try to do the Brooklyn accent, but he was saying, Ben, there are two things you got to know about business. And I said, okay, yeah, what's that, David? And he's so smart. I mean, this is really good, right? So he said, well, the first thing is this. It's not about the money. It's about the money. That was number one. And he's so right. And I've remembered that a lot of times. It's really served me in good stead. And the other thing he said was, you always live to fight another day, right? And what he meant by that is what we're saying here, right? Which is that in this business of financial whatever that we're all in, right? It's a good business, right? You can make it's a business you can stay in your entire life and do good, make money, do all those things, right? but you can't be that teacup that gets broken. Once you lose that credibility, once you lose your authenticity, once you lose your reputation, there's no business on the face of the earth where reputation is more important than what we do, investing, right? Period, bar none. And so just preserve that. Even if you're wrong on stocks or the markets or whatever, don't ever feel like you have to go all in or make it all up or tell a little lie that leads into a big lie. You don't. Just play it straight, keep your authenticity, and this is a business where you can do good and make money for a lifetime.
So I agree. I mean, we obviously espouse the same value system, and then I contrast that against the Tesla game or Benioff or the Honeywell
Long-term
CEO,
capital management,
or
and the guys are back in business, and
the
so many
cheese,
other,
man,
yeah.
the cheese, right? Like this, I really, Rusty's recent article, The Cheese, really resonated with me, where we're now in a society where politically, economically, financially, the way to extract profit is to create edge cases that
Go after the
navigate around the
Exactly.
spirit of the laws and the
Yep.
rules and the regulations and the spirit of capitalism and creative destruction, right? So we talk about authenticity, and we, I think, as a group, espouse it in our writings, in our operations,
Yep.
in what we stand for. And yet, when you look around us at those that are extracting the most from the system, we observe the exact
It ain't
opposite.
us.
How do we reconcile that?
It ain't
Right?
us. Yeah. But it's always been this way, man. It's always been this way. And I think, now, look, don't get me wrong. I think we're not just in the golden age of fraud and cheese and, pursuing the edge case. We're in the platinum age. We're in the diamond age. It's just, it's beyond, anything in, my adult life of understanding or anything I've read about, frankly, for that matter. But Adam, so what?
No, and I hear you, right? And that's about the wolfpack.
It just makes you a little jealous. That's all. It makes you a little jealous. Like, oh, could I get some of that juice? Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Let's change that title. It's tough to see just some of these things go viral that are absolute nonsense.
Well, that's
hard.
a legit
It's hard.
self-own.
It makes me angry. I get it. But and this is so. This has been the most the thing that keeps me going. To your question, when I started writing Epsilon Theory, I may have told you this in the last talk we had. This was the summer of 2013, so just over 7 years ago, and I was in a pretty dark place. I don't mind telling you, right? I mean, we'd given all, right? We'd given all our money back in the hedge fund. I mean, it was close to $1 billion. We gave it all back because it just wasn't working. We never lost money for clients, but it's just not working.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to figure out, well, what does work? What the hell is going on in markets and politics? And I started writing, and it was 100 people, and then now it's like 100,000, right? And it's like that old Police song, right? Tossing the message in a bottle out into the ocean, and you come back and there are 100 bottles, washed up on your beach. And that's what this has been for me, right? The publishing and the writing. Getting to go, guys like, I wouldn't know you guys if we weren't writing, if you weren't writing. And it's finding this brotherhood and sisterhood. And unfortunately, it's too much of a brotherhood and not enough sisters in what we do, right, in our business. But it's finding that, I like pack because it sounds a lot more, forceful than community, but that's what it is. And it's it's Fight Club, man. Except, it's okay to tell people you're part of it, but it's everywhere, in every city, in every country, every burg and hamlet out there. There's one of us. It's just hard to know, who we are and how to connect, and that's where the writing and staying true and what you guys do, and even, God bless you, a Labor Day weekend, a little podcast. This is how people get connected, and
So
that's how the world changes.
So you've been very active with the burn it the fuck down meme, and I that really, it resonates with a lot of different people, I'm sure, for a bunch of different reasons. But what I've been so admiring about with you is how, and you get pissed off, and you definitely go off on Twitter, and you need to take a break, and I certainly get that, believe me.
Yeah.
But what's been so great is just how you're able to come back to it over and over with such grace, like without the grudges, and without the, like, you literally just keep coming back to the brown field or the green field objective of this whole thing, right? Like, yes, there's all this bullshit out there, and I want to burn down the edge cases, but how do you carve yourself off from that trajectory towards nihilism? Because I don't get that from you. I get the I'm still hopeful meme from you, or impression from you, and not the nihilist meme. But you do need to get to know you, in order to be able to see that, right? So, but I genuinely feel it. So how do you separate those, or how do you avoid going down that nihilist path?
You do good works. That's it. That's it.
Back to the original topic. Do good work.
You're connecting with good people, doing good things, and by doing good things with good people,
and by good work, I mean research and like that. But by good works, I also mean that in the, I'll call it the religious sense. I'm not a religious guy at all, right? But I mean, help your freaking neighbor. I mean, just do that. Just do that, and it will. You get back so much more than you give. I know that sounds trite and silly, but brother, it's the truth. It's the truth.
So are you winning the battle?
It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It always is. I've got my alter ego, Neb Tana, who's kind of adrift in the sea of social media, and communicates better with strangers and bots on Twitter than he does with his own family, frankly, and is antisocial and can't connect and can't kind of form the words, right? And Neb's with me every day. Neb's with me every day.
I just can't shake Gresham's law. I feel like the bad memes just crowd out the good, and it's no matter how much good you want to put out there, there's just, at the moment, anyways, it does seem overwhelming.
This is why I wrote that Fiat News concept and the articles I wrote around that, because it came out of Gresham's law. So Gresham's law, he was the treasurer, or whatever you called it, for Queen Elizabeth, right? And she had a problem because her dad, right, had taken all the silver coins and said, can't we recast these, but only with half the silver as before? And so it sparked this recession, in Elizabethan England, and said, she said, what's going on? And of course, Lord Gresham, or whatever his, I don't even know his first name, he said, well, bad money drives out good. Bad money drives out good. Because if you do have a good silver coin, and it's a good silver coin, you're sure as hell not going to spend it. You're going to hide it, you're going to keep it, you're not going to spend it, because you just don't know what those other, if you're exchanging it for a good coin. So in exactly the same way, bad news, and I don't mean bad in the sense of distressing, I mean bad in the sense of constructed and fake. Fiat news drives out good money. It's exactly the same thing. So you're right, Adam. It's not just a daily battle. It's a losing battle, man. This isn't a mean reverting phenomenon. This gets a lot worse before it gets any better, which is exactly why, Adam, you say, well, why not, join the other side and, rape and pillage with the best of them, right? It's that things get worse from here, not better, and you need to know who your pack is, because that's the only way we're going to make it is to have a pack.
And
Yeah,
is
that's
the
a good
burn it
point.
the fuck down mean that final recognizing that shrinking good money and trying to make your best effort? I mean, is this something you truly believe that you would be using if you were winning the battle, or is this kind of like a last ditch attempt to get people's attention?
I'll tell you where it came up. It wasn't a thoughtful thing. It wasn't a planned thing, right? There wasn't some grand strategy to start, saying burn it the fuck down, BITFD. Although I do kind of fancy myself the whole, second foundation, Isaac Asimov, that you kind of plant these things and try to create it. And, I've tried to do some stuff like that, but this was not one of them. It's kind of, I want to try to channel it in that direction. Don't get me wrong. But I first wrote this after Epstein was killed or died in his jail.
Suicided when he was suicided.
Yeah, I mean, and I still don't know, right? Whether it was suicide or was murder, I don't know. Here's the thing: I don't care. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Why wasn't he protected?
That's it, right? So the government, a legitimate, non-corrupt government. You've got one job in this situation, right? You bring the bastard to trial. That's your one job. And the fact that you failed, for whatever freaking reason you failed, means that you're a corrupt system. It just, by definition, you are. And, it's the note I wrote was, I'm a superstitious man, which is after the Godfather, right? Where Vito comes into the meeting of the five families and he wants to bring his son Michael home. And he says, look, he's going to come home. Got to clean up all these false accusations of him, killing the police captain and all. And, I forgive, the death of my other son, but Michael's coming home. And he said, in his death, I do not forgive. Right. And if by some accident he's struck by lightning, or he actually says this, he's arrested and he hangs himself in his jail cell. That's the example that Mario Puzo uses when he writes The Godfather, 50 years ago. Right? Vito says, this I do not forgive, because he says, I'm a superstitious man. And I'm a superstitious man too. I do not forgive this. So that was the first moment of writing, burn it the fuck down, because it's the entire system is corrupt, so, and it has to be reshaped.
I have to admit that and I don't know if Richard feels the same way. For those who don't know, Richard's from Brazil. I'm from Peru. When I start having conversations with Adam, but he's a bit of a nihilist, and I think he likes the idea of burn it the fuck down. I have issues with that concept.
Yeah.
Starting fresh.
Fair.
The idea that when you burn it down, you're going to rise like the phoenix and something better is going to come up. Because we've seen in my lifetime, in my parents' lifetime, in many South American countries and third world countries, things being burned the fuck down. And sometimes Peru's an example of rising like a phoenix, taking poverty from 55% to 35%, seeing growth every single year for 7 years. We burned it all down, redid our constitution, and started fresh in 1989 after my family left, right after the terrorist communist organization came and burnt it down. But then we've also seen other scenarios, like Argentina constantly burning it down and rebuilding, and burning it down and rebuilding, and many other third world nations
Venezuela,
have these
I mean,
these massive revolutions, and the complete opposite happens, right? So when we South Americans look at your corrupt system, we want it. Oh my God, it's so less corrupt than anywhere else on the planet. Like it's kind of like the ideal. Everybody still wants to come to America, still wants to be part of that system. It is still an operating system that tends to not allow individuals to completely ruin it, right?
Well, it's
not
a
like
relative.
a single individual can do that in South America.
It's
A
relative
single
versus
individual,
absolute.
Trump has
Yeah.
not been able to do that in the U.S. yet, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
so-
Well,
I find that, like, I have a negative visceral reaction to the nihilist approach of like burn it down and let's start fresh. I'm just curious to hear if you've had that pushback before.
Oh, all the time, and it's a legitimate pushback. It's entirely fair, and sometimes I push back on myself, and then some other slap in the face will occur, and I'll say, no, burn it the fuck down, right? And look, you're right. It's a first world luxury to be able to say that, and it is a constant issue for me to. I'll back up a second. So there were these riots in Atlanta, and Killer Mike, the rabbi, he comes on, he starts talking about, when we talk about burning, we want to burn down the system. We're not burning down, your neighbor's house. And that, me and Killer Mike are saying the same thing.
Right.
Right. And
There's nuance there. Yeah.
I don't, and I know it's a nuance, and I know particularly the people who don't want to burn it the fuck down, right? Who profit from keeping it up the way it is. They'll come at me and say, "Oh, you want to burn it the fuck down? You're fucking, blah blah blah," right? And that critique, when I know where that's coming from, that I get all bristly about that. I don't get bristly at all about what you're saying. Because it's fair. Frankly, what I want is a constitutional convention, right? Because we can disagree about Trump the man, right? Catalyst or something deeper, but I think the fact is that in the United States, our domestic political games are now, in this kind of game theoretic kind of craziness, right? We are in a competitive game. We're talking right at the beginning where nobody can see past anything other than through the lens of the competition of Dems versus GOP, Trump versus Biden or whoever. Everything goes through that lens. Right? That didn't used to be that way. There's always been an element of that. Don't get me wrong. There's always been an element of that. But when in the past, when the United States has had a threat to all of us, like COVID is a threat to all of us today, it has not been made partisan. No, and I'm not saying that's all Trump's fault. I'm not saying that. But the system that he broke has a result of this is the way it is, and it doesn't fix itself. So I don't know what to do other than to burn it down.
Well,
right.
I think I agree. Well, Killer Mike, we watched that many times over, and I had a feeling when he said those two things that he was saying something that he thought he could do, separate the burning the houses down and the stores down with burning the system down.
Yep.
Here's the way I see this idea. I see it as an options contract, right? You just increase volatility, right? The moment you start rooting for that and asking for the complete annihilation of a system, whatever it may be, you increase the volatility of outcomes. So you can have something really great or something really bad. And I just don't think you can do one without the other. And that's my big fear. Coming, I'm suffering from PTSD in my past. The question is there no other way? Like, can't we not reform? Can we not move forward and try to fight in a different way than trying to burn it down?
So
Or is that gone now?
I think that what burning it down in the way that I want and that Killer Mike wants, I think what that requires, and it's the hardest thing to do, is truly effective leadership on the side of, I'll call it the rebellion, the resistance. Because, again, both from a narrative sense and from an efficacy sense, the only thing that works is, in the 20th century at least, or the last half of the 20th century and the 21st century, is profound nonviolence. Profound nonviolence. And that has not been the leadership. It's been a leadership failure of particularly the Black Lives Movement, right? A movement that I support 1,000%. But the leadership, there's been a failure of leadership in the sense of seeing the violence that emerges it as regrettable, or ain't that a shame? No. The violence that emerges from this is a betrayal of your movement, and it must be treated like that. And it requires the kind of leadership that you got from, an MLK, that you got from a Gandhi, right? That people who knew how to play the game effectively. And the way you play the game effectively and the way you burn down a system is the long game with absolute adherence to nonviolence, right? And it's so hard from a leadership perspective. It's the hardest thing that a leader of a resistance movement can ever do. But if you're the underdog in any sort of fight, this is true if you're an underdog business. This is true if you're an underdog social movement. This is true if you're an underdog sports team. You must have more discipline than the people you're fighting.
It's the long game is the interesting two words there that I think, we've all been reading The Three Body Problem, right? And the series. And one of the things that it's about is about planning for 500 years ahead.
Right. Which makes it a very Chinese novel, frankly. Right? No, I'm serious. I'm serious. So the translation's phenomenal, but one of the things I really loved about that whole series was I felt like I got a view into modern China and I'll call it Chinese culture in a way that I don't otherwise. Right? So what you're just describing, right? That's a pretty Chinese perspective just right there.
But it sounds like what you're saying, Ben, in terms of burn it the fuck down, really is working through the system, playing a long game. So in a sense, you don't really want to burn it the fuck down and bring on the terror years of the French Revolution. It's not that chaos that increases volatility to the degree that Rodrigo was describing, which, as a Brazilian myself, I also don't want to see, because you have a neighbor to your north, you see what's happening in Venezuela. You have this, and so I share that view. But you want to burn it the fuck down. So a little cheese in the.
No, I really do. I really do want to burn some stuff down, right? Because I don't.
That's
believe,
Neb. That's Neb.
I do not believe that you can change the system through incremental adjustment. I think that the system that we have set up today does not allow for effective change from within. That the rules have been so co-opted and dominated by the self-aggrandizing, rich people and powerful people, right? That change within the system is not possible, right? So that's when I say that I want to have a change of the rules. I want to have a constitutional convention. I don't think we're ready for that. I think any constitutional convention next week is just going to be co-opted by the same cast of characters. I think that there's probably a dissolution and a splintering that's required. But the person I look to for inspiration on this is, and I know this also sounds so ridiculous, but it's Saint Augustine, right? Who's looking from afar at Rome, and it's not, a 5-year decline for Rome where it goes. No, it's it's centuries where Rome just kind of slowly winds down in the West and keeps on going for, centuries more in the East. But, he's writing out there, and what he's saying is that he has to separate himself. You got the city of man over here, and we've got the city of God over here. Again, I'm not talking religious, I'm talking purely secular worlds. We need to form our own community separate from this world that keeps trying to drag us in and try to force us to see everything in the world through their lens, right? The revolution is going to happen in our hearts first, right? It really is where the revolution happens first, and that's the hardest revolution of all. But I really do mean burn it down. I don't mean just reform the system. I mean
not in our
I mean a
lifetime.
new system.
Not in our lifetime, right? Because
I don't know, man.
I'm trying to.
I'm hopeful.
I think
I'm
the
hopeful.
sooner the better for Ben, I think.
I'm hopeful.
Right?
Well, I
'Cause-
think
but-
where you're going is that the failed state is the result of a successful mission to burn it the fuck down, right? And so do we agree about that with that premise, Ben? Is that because I think that's where our South American guys are.
And you have
are
example
coming
in the Middle East right now. You took these terrible people who were oppressing portions of their population for sure, and they were bad actors definitely. And in the toppling of them, the chaos that ensued and the vacuum of power actually brought in something worse.
Belarus right now.
Like you have many examples of that. I'm just trying to understand how this could
Guys,
bring about.
we know what, we've got the blueprint, right? It's not like we have to invent a new form of government. It's not like, this is the, mentioned, Eric Weinstein earlier, Eric and his brother Brett's kind of whatever this Articles of Unity thing. I think it's silly. I think their heart's in the right place. I think it's like a high school senior decided to write, political philosophy, and I mean that with a lot of love, right? But a top-down kind of new system of government, a new state, that's not it, right? That's not it, and neither is the strong man or the Lukashenko. We've got lots of models. Look, we know what it looks like, right? It really is liberty and justice for all, right? It really is these small L liberal virtues, these small C conservative virtues. It really is one person, one vote. It's all of those things. I believe, though, we're at the point where there's been so much detritus built up on this edifice that we had, 1789, that it doesn't. It's just. It's like one of these old master paintings where they say, oh, we're going to clean it off, right? And you say, oh my God, there's color underneath there. Right, and it is like the painting comes alive after they just take all the gunk off from a couple of centuries. That, I mean,
somebody wrote here
make-
that it should be the Wolfpack as Founding Fathers 2.0. I like that.
Not wrong, not wrong. I like that because the whole notion of the pack, right, is that you are you and then here's some of these other kind of phrases, right? It is the clear eyes, full hearts can't lose, right? The pack is like a high school football team in Odessa, Texas, where that phrase comes from, right? Friday Night Lights, clear eyes, full hearts can't lose, because you're This gets back, Adam, to what we were talking about before. It's finding those people who you want to be in the foxhole with, who see you as not as a means to an end, which is what every politician and every political party and every corporation today does. They see you as a means to an end. What I'm saying is that you find the people who see you as an end in and of itself. That's it. That's it. Find that pack. That's what a pack is. And that's how you create a society that has to come before you have a state, right? Before you have a government. You've got to have a society that works.
I agree. And I think this is kind of, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the way I sort of see it is we don't want to burn it the fuck down. I think the way that Rodrigo and Richard are coming at this, we don't want to burn it the fuck down because you get a failed state and you don't know what materializes after a failed state.
It's
but
awful.
I think where maybe you and I, Ben, are a little closer to is the idea we're already in a fucking failed state that has been painted over by a fucking bull market.
You're out of your mind.
Yeah,
don't know if this is a failed
we're in a
state,
failed state that has been
So it couldn't get worse.
by a bull market.
It couldn't get worse than this, right?
No. I know it can get vastly worse, but I'm saying
Get vastly
the
worse.
idea that we have
that's
a
not the point.
functioning state.
No, for
I'm
sure.
with you. I'm
It's a broken concept. It is a broken.
That was a straw
state
man.
that
I was,
was
yeah.
painted over by a bull market. Period. Full stop.
yes.
We have a luxury here that I think many other countries are trying to create in Latin America, and that is a sense that you are a nation, frankly, and in the same way that I think the notion of a Peruvian identity I think is kind of finally right, maybe taking root. Right, it's declining in the United States. The idea of an American identity
For
is
sure that's true.
going
For
down
sure
like
that's
this.
true. There is no doubt that you guys are on the downswing, 100%.
Yeah, right.
It's always, for me, it's always just how much you want to burn it down. Like, is it going to go like this? Can we inch it up? Because I'm just always terrified of that other scenario. And you know what I'm finding when I speak to my American clients and friends and even Canadians is, again, speaking from just coming out of reading the three body problem and planning 500 years ahead, is we've had legitimate discussions about like how far forward do you want to think when it comes to global warming, when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Like some of my friends are like, I care about my children, and after that I'm done. That's all I care about, because right now this is all I can control. Whereas in the past, when you saw a path forward, when you saw this a bit of stability in your future, you can plan. You can do estate planning. There's no estate planning in South America, right? Inflation you're just cost whatever you get, you spend. Whatever you have, the friends that you have, you take advantage of them because they're going to be gone tomorrow to another country because they can't live in this place anymore. They're going to be shot or whatever. Like there is, I do see it in North America that people are becoming more and more insular, rather than thinking about, like, when you have stability, you have the luxury of thinking about 2, 3, 4 generations ahead. And I agree that there's a trend toward being more insular because of what's going on.
So there's, we talk about the American founding as being this exemplar because, like I say, we know what it should look like, right? Yeah. There's another, great period of time. It's the Scottish Enlightenment, right? So it's in Edinburgh and Scotland, also in kind of the 1700s. And there was this guy there, the Scottish patriot. His name was Andrew Fletcher. And his quote was, I don't care who writes the laws. I care not who writes the laws of my country, so long as I write the songs. And man, that's what I want to do. I want to write our songs. And it's like, Lin-Manuel, right? I mean, he's writing the songs, man.
That's right.
And songs, of course, is a metaphor for the society that underpins whatever you build. Exactly, whatever you build in terms of the edifice of the state and the like. And it's that society is where we've got to start. And you start, that means from the bottom up. It means, pack. The Fight Club analogy is, I'm sticking with that. And that's how it changes. That's how the system burns down, or maybe that's how the system, is rebuilt in a better way. I don't know, but if you've got that society in place, the rest of it, you're writing the songs. The laws will take care of themselves.
So, and I'm just going to shift the narrative a little bit here. Towards in one of your previous interviews, you talked about how some narratives click and some narratives don't. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was thinking was, if we want to do take a middle ground, have you identified any ways of finding the narratives that click in order to get what you want than you did in the past? Like, you're learning something with the tools that you have in order to get better at it, better at getting the message out?
Yeah. The first one is one we've talked about, I think already here today, and that is, whatever you're doing in your messaging, it has got to be authentic, right? If it's a little fakey, if it ain't you, and I mean profoundly you, people sniff that shit out from 100 miles away, and maybe it works for a little bit, but it doesn't work for long. The converse of that is true as well. You may come up with something that's true to your heart, that is authentic to you, and it may not work. Right? Stick with it, is what I'm saying. There is a long game here, right? And in the same way that we have this, I know it seems like we have this short attention theater going on with all of us. And, Rodrigo is saying, we've got 30 big stories this year. The message you have, these stories, though, they also never go away, right? So if you just stick with it, and if it's really authentic, you will find your pack. It's never been easier to get a message out there today, right? You don't have the intermediary forces of, publishers and government and the like. If you've got a message, you got something to say, you can get it out there. People may not care, but you're not going to be prevented from getting it out there.
But I guess what I was asking is, do the narrative maps that you see help you in trying to navigate it better?
Well, I'll give you an example because usually the examples I'm looking up are things where I think the world has gone awry, and you can really see it in these narrative maps. Tesla's a great. I know I was talking about Tesla, but let me talk to you about Tesla and the narrative around Tesla. And historically, there have always been two narratives around Tesla, and you can actually see them in these kind of like clusters and maps that we create. There's the narrative around Tesla, the company. How many cars does it build? How profitable is it? Blah, 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 right? And then there's the narrative around Tesla, the idea, right? Oh, autonomous vehicles and, batteries and space and all these ideas. What you see is this great big tug of war between these two very distinct narrative concepts around Tesla. And whenever Tesla, the idea, is more central in the map, whenever it's dominant, stock price goes up. Whenever the narrative around Tesla, the company, is dominant, stock price goes down. Right? What's happened just over the last 6 months, though, is something really weird. There's been a third body, right? A third narrative body. And that's just Tesla, the stock. Tesla, the stock, right? The articles, the narrative is around what did the stock do? Not what's the company doing? Not, what's the big fundamental idea about driving it? No. It's just Tesla, the stock. And you also see this like with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. You've got, a small smattering of articles that are about, Bitcoin, the, store of value or whatever the fundamental ideas are. And then there's another cluster. It's just, okay, Bitcoin, the price, the price of the commodity or coin, whatever you want to call it. When the narrative is about the price of something, and the sentiment is positive, when you've got effective missionaries, man, it just goes up. it wins.
It's
Wins.
the self-reinforcing expectations of price reinforced by the self-reinforcing expectations.
It's what
of
George
price.
Soros called reflexivity,
Yep.
right? I mean, that was his concept, and he was right. There's a bigger concept. There are lots of messages that we get. He was just focused on the messages that the market gives itself, right? That's reflexivity, the information in price and the way that rolls on itself. It's also messages from what we call missionaries and from the world, but that is exactly the idea. So that's a really interesting thing to think about, right? If you're thinking about how do I create a narrative where I want the price of my effort to go up, how do I want people to be talking about it? One of the real important things is you want people to be talking about you because it's the crowd looking at the crowd. And so you should absolutely tell people, oh, I've reached this milestone in, AUM, right. Or whatever this stuff, it's it's a little, you can be braggy about it and you've got to craft it in the right way, but craft it in the right way. When you get that kind of snowball rolling down the hill and you get people talking about the success of you, that makes you successful, right? So,
Wow.
it's nothing that a PR guy doesn't already know.
It's
right?
Trump praising the million people in the crowd and there being,
you got it, man.
4,000 and exactly just that sort of signaling.
You got it. You call the attention of the crowd to the crowd and to the signifiers of the crowd, whether that's stock price or what have you, and you take it away from the quotidian details of the performance of your entity, because that's just going to be a downer.
Yep, it's the laugh track. People have to be told what they should think about it. Exactly.
Figure out your laugh track, man. That's exactly it. We're all a sitcom here. We're all a sitcom.
Wow.
Amen.
Does anyone know where Galt's Gulch is? I need directions to. I think that's where my pack is.
So I'm curious what the current. I mean, this year the changes in narratives and the turbulence in narratives has just been unlike anything I've ever experienced. Anyways, I'm just wondering because you've got this quantitative tool that you use to sort of identify the clusters of narratives and it's like a minimum spanning tree or something, but there's some causal chains in the narratives and stuff. And I'm just wondering, what are you seeing or what is most relevant to what you're observing or have observed about that in the near term or at the moment?
So big picture, what I'd say is that, yes, we've had all these, literally a cataclysmic shock in the form of COVID-19. We've got, the political shocks that come every day. One of the things that I find most fascinating, though, is that the day-to-day business of Wall Street, which is to make up stories to sell you shit, it just goes like clockwork. It just keeps on going. Every month there's a news story. Buy financials. Buy consumer discretionary. Buy technology. What are you going to buy next? What are you going to buy next? And that constant metronome of narrative, it's still with us, man. It is. I don't know how it ever goes away. So that's what we try to focus most on in kind of our applications of this, is identifying the business of Wall Street, which is to make up stories to get you to buy shit. And they're really good at it. And it doesn't stop. It never stops. And so that's one picture, right? So not the.
Can you differentiate that for me from just business? I mean, isn't that the objective of capitalism, to make up stories for you to buy shit?
No.
How would it be different than the reason we again, you're sold things, whether it's food, whether it's cars, whether it's the next thing, to create a narrative around your social status? How, like,
you're right. This
such an interesting.
This exercise is part of every business. It's been part of humanity since we have had humanity, right? It expresses itself a lot in politics, but where I find it in its purest form is financial assets, because man, that's what a multiple is. How do you price a cash flow? What's the story? That's
Okay.
that's all it is. Price is story, right? I mean, so it is such part and parcel of these, intangible things that we live and breathe, right? It's all story. So you're right. It's in every business, right? You got to sell,
Yep.
you got to,
Whatever.
sell
Widgets,
candy
cars,
bars. You got to sell
jewelry,
cars. You got to
watches,
sell
art. I mean,
whatever,
maybe art
right?
would come close. I'm not sure.
Art comes pretty close. I agree with that. Art comes
It's
close.
weird.
Frankly, that's how I've always thought of Bitcoin, right? I think Bitcoin is very elegant art. Does it have value? Absolutely,
That's great.
absolutely.
love
But
it.
that's what Bitcoin is to me. It's very elegant and beautiful art, but it's story.
So apart from the Wall Street
Yeah.
narrative, are your graphs showing you any other narrative clusters that are particularly insightful or that you're paying attention to and you think that others should?
I
watching?
mean, so what we try to look at are, I'll call them micro narratives. That's the Wall Street drum beating, right? That's every thematic idea you've ever been pitched, and it's the subject matter of 98% of the content on CNBC, right? Is what I'll call is a micro narrative. There are also macro narratives that are constructed, right? So one macro narrative is, well, what's the central bank narrative, right? Is it a hawkish? Is it a Fed put narrative? Is it we're looking at inflation and we don't care narrative, right? There are about 5 what we call narrative regimes around central banks, and right now we're in this narrative regime of the way that everyone is talking about central banks, the Fed, and the way the Fed talks about itself is around the language of inflation. That is generally market positive, right? You can go back and see in history when this regime has existed, and typically the next month, the market's up 2%. It's a pretty big impact, frankly, right? Another one, we track is how the market talks about itself in terms of what matters, right? Is it focused on technicals? Is it focused on valuation? Is it focused on, fundamentals, which is a little different than being focused on value, right? But it's talking about fundamentals. And right now we have this transition into a fundamentals focus, and that is typically, that can be not as good for markets, right? If the news flow, if the fundamentals news flow, so what do I mean by fundamentals? It's talking about things like, what's the jobs number, right? What's is the economy bouncing back with growth, right? Those are the questions that are really dominating how the market talks about itself today. And so long as the news flow is good, that's constructive. But when the news flow ain't so good, like we've got an election in 60 days where you could have a constitutional crisis that we've never we haven't seen this country in 150 years, that's
Has
not
the
also
election
constructive.
entered in the zeitgeist in terms of price action, as far as you can measure from your narrative machine? Are the markets paying enough attention, or is this still led by the narrative of inflation?
So what you've seen dominating the kind of the macro narrative has been questions about COVID, right? For obvious reasons. And what we're seeing over the last 2 days, this is a non-COVID related correction, right? I very much believe it's because people looking forward 60 days to an election, not because it's, Biden might be elected, or it's not who, but it's, are we going to have a functioning transition of power?
Uncertainty around the election. There's a lot of
going to happen
around this,
right? You see this in the VIX curve. You're seeing really elevated VIX levels, out around the election. I don't think it's elevated enough. So, you're going to have spot, catching up to that. That's what I think is going on.
You've got some pretty neat graphics or charts or something that you typically show too, right? Have you got do any of those sort of help to illustrate the story, or are they kind of confusing at the moment?
It's the sort of thing we need a good half hour, to really do it justice. Otherwise, it's just kind of, oh, that's cool. We got some which I'm happy to show. I mean, I love showing cool stuff, but it would just make everybody. I think here this is just kind of showing some of the, what it is we do, and I've got some cool maps. But let me pull something else up. This let me see if we still got this up on our screen. Oh yeah, so
now that's what I'm talking about.
This is what you're talking
That's
about, right?
Cool visual.
I mean,
yeah, look at that.
So it looks so cool, right? Well, this is the Tesla narrative, right? So this is in 2019, all the articles that were published about Tesla. And so if you zoom in on this, it's comprised of about 6,000 little dots, and each little dot is a separate, unique article about Tesla in major publication in the U.S. And then it's a what's called unsupervised search. So it's comparing every word in every article to every other word in every other article, which is a factorial. So it's like a couple of trillion calculations. And then this is a map that shows the similarity in language, the similarity in word choice and grammatical structures, so that the computer, clusters all the articles and shows the connections between them. And the way you read a map like this is you're looking for centrality. What's the stuff right here in the middle of the map? Because this is where the gravity is really coming from. You know what all these articles are right here in the middle of the map? Elon Musk tweets. Right? And this is at the core of the narrative around the company. And it's the Cybertruck is this, a big one here. The Tesla semi-electric, all of these kind of central narratives are about kind of big ideas. Oh, we're going to do car insurance. That's a really central one right here. Oh, what's the Tesla Model 3 performance? And way over here, off in the side, you've got stock market stuff. Right? You've got company stuff, which, like I say, is kind of a negative. That's off to the side. You've got Tesla short sellers way out here. Why Tesla stock fell. It's all in the periphery of this narrative map, and that's really meaningful, right? So what's useful here is trying to understand what's at the core of a narrative, and it really lets you visualize that. I'll show you.
What clusters are migrating toward the center, what ones are moving more toward the edges, and what does that say about how the stock is likely to react to news and the type of news
exactly
react to?
You need to start thinking about memes and narratives as living creatures, right? And you put them under. It's like getting a drop of water and putting it underneath, a microscope in the 1700s, and you look through the microscope and says, "Oh my God, there are things living in there." It's really like that, because then you track over time how a narrative is born and how it lives and how it dies. I tell you, every year when I look at this, these Elon Musk tweets are always at the core of it. He's really good at controlling the narrative. He's really good at this, right? I mean, I think he's a kind of a sociopath, right? But he's really good at this stuff. Right?
It's amazing. Yeah.
I'll show you. This won't look as pretty because I've just got it on PowerPoint, or I think I've got it on a PDF. Let's see if I can pull this up. Tesla this year. Yeah, this doesn't look as pretty, but I'll bring it up here and see if I can zoom in on it. All right, what I was showing you before was 2019. This is year to date 2020, And let me zoom in here a little bit. Here we go. All right, still got Elon Musk tweets right there in the middle, right? It's still
Pretty central.
right. That's right, right. But look at how this whole map is. There's really no center to it, right? I mean, this is what I mean. There is no narrative anymore about Tesla, the company, right? You've got the car stuff, right? It's way over here. It's no longer in the middle. It's way over here to the side. All this stuff around here is Tesla, the stock price. All this stuff is, Tesla, the stock price. Analyst worried, Tesla stock, so there is no
it's
there
way more
there.
financialized than the previous map. The previous map was much more about the company and what the company was doing.
The company are the big ideas, right? Oh, yeah, we can do car insurance. Why not? Yeah. Yeah. Autonomous driving. Yeah, of course we can do that, right? This is
a matter of reflexivity. This is the market watching the market.
This is the market watching the market. There's no there, except for Elon Musk tweets.
Right.
Anyway, so that's the kind of stuff we do, and both on
beautiful
kind of fun stuff like Tesla, but also the business of Wall Street, which is to make up stories and sell you shit. That's our bread and butter.
You derive portfolio decisions based on a lot of this narrative machine?
Yeah, I mean, much less so. I'll call it the idiosyncratic stuff. I mean, this is for, if you've got a big position in Tesla, you want to know this stuff, but I don't have a systematic strategy around Tesla. We've absolutely got a systematic strategy around the drum beating of Wall Street, right? Because what happens is that what you're creating is the how to say this, the advertising model, because that's basically what we're saying. We're saying Wall Street's an advertiser, right? And so whatever you want to look at, we like to look at S&P 500 sectors, right? So month to month S&P sectors. If you start seeing, there's not a lot of drum beating yet, but what drum beating there is, it's really positive coming out of financial media. Well, that's a potential snowball that's still at the top of the hill. I want to be long that. It's what we'd call an emerging narrative. When stuff gets, high, what we call the structure of narrative, the attention, the drum beating, the focus, and in negative sentiment, that's when we want to be short, right? So it's a sector rotation strategy where we look at, every sector and figure out these behavioral signals to go long or short. So yeah, that's what we put together into portfolios. That's what we put together in portfolios, a systematic strategy.
Is there any sort of general sense, as you said, you want to get sort of long the positive news or the positive drumbeat? Mm-hmm. Is there any sort of signals in there that are counterintuitive that were not what you expected? I suppose is what I'm asking. Areas where that to me is somewhat intuitive, like, okay, you're there ahead of the news. Was there anything in that sine curve that you felt was, wow, this was kind of an interesting point in the narrative that was unexpected?
Well, I think what's interesting to us is how powerful these are, regardless of what all is happening in the world, right? It's just the day-to-day business of, like say, Wall Street and financial media to be coming up with these stories. And it's just the life cycle of these stories. It really is like an organism. And it's just like clockwork. There's always got to be a new story to get people to buy more stuff.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say like cockroaches. That would have worked too.
Yeah, that worked too. That works too.
But I suppose there's
every.
Go ahead.
But frankly, to your point, I mean, it's been very important for us that what we did. We started with the behavioral models. We started with our idea of how the world works, because, and you guys know this. I mean, the ability to kind of try to do your data fitting and backfitting on this stuff is, it's just once you start going down that path, it's like the noble lie, right? You kind of construct this stuff that works, right? But it's gotta. I'd much rather have something that, I don't know how it's going to work, but this is how I think the world actually behaves, and so that's what we're going with.
Great,
awesome,
love this. Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate.
Thanks for letting me show it. No, I appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Great.
We're at an hour and 40 minutes now. You get us
I gotta
every
go,
time,
man. I
You
gotta
get
start
us every
drinking.
Yeah.
time.
You gotta
Yeah,
start
exactly.
drinking.
Yeah.
Faster, you mean, right? Start drinking
Faster. Exactly.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you
talking.
so much for all your time. Yeah,
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's such a blast. Always,
Yeah,
always
this is awesome, Ben.
No,
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Or Neb. I'm not sure who we had.
No. It's all Ben right now.
Neb.
Yeah. We keep Mr. Hyde, locked away as much as we can.
Fantastic. In
What's
2 years,
next?
we'll do this in person
He's
again.
sleeping.
You got it, guys.
Maybe when
Till
Trump
next
comes
time.
out,
long
we'll
weekend.
do it
In
so much.
person. Same to you.